ever wondered if the reason that you're feeling down is because of how much you're looking at your screen? Well, guess what? That's one of the things that I was wondering too. So I decided to look a little further into it and do an evaluation on, does screen time affect depression? Now for me, I have 5 kids, and I was very curious as to what is happening with them as they are getting older. For myself growing up, I remember life being a little bit easier going, things not feeling as pressured or as weighted, and I also remember feeling far more connected to my peers and people around me rather than a screen to connect to them. Now, to get a little further into this, some of the information that I looked at, I went to the World Health Organization. Now, the World Health Organization is something that here in the United States perhaps isn't looked at the same, but for me, I find it a good source of information because it is a large collective of scientists, doctors, and people who are very well knowledged in their career or lively aspect. And I kind of hold that in high regard because those are people that have put their life and their time and energy into doing things that are important to us. So some of the information that the World Health Organization put out has shown that as technology progresses, so does our interaction with screens, which is pretty straightforward, we all know that. Some of the stuff that I didn't know that was kind of shocking was 1 in 10 adolescents show sign of problematic social media behavior, with girls reporting a higher level of problematic behavior. This was just one study that the World Health Organization did. There is tons and tons of studies on their website, so feel free to look around and find some more information for yourself. Now, what it means by problematic information or problematic behavior is it could be, bullying, it could be explicit use, it could be just engaging in behaviors that could be negative. So that's kind of concerning because, having 5 children myself, that's a large bit of what they're doing in school is sitting on a screen on their school issued computer. So I really want to see, a reduction in that just because that is something that I feel. Now, another thing that I found interesting was 1 in 3 young people reported constant contact with friends online. So that's 36% of young children reported that that's how they keep in contact with their friends is online. 36%, that's pretty big. I remember calling and going outside to meet with my friends. Maybe that's changed, but who knows. Now, the other thing that's interesting, right, is the highest rate was among 15-year-old girls. 44% were actually using online to communicate with their friends constantly. So that's pretty cool, but it's also pretty concerning also because with that large increase, right, is there positive behavior happening? We found that right before that 1 in 10 adolescents show sign of problematic behavior. Now, what's interesting is we get a little further into the World Health Organization's information here. 1/3 or 34% of adolescents play digital games daily, with 1/5, so that's 20%, 22% playing for at least 4 hours on days when they engaged in gaming. Now, not only are these kids probably at school on a screen, then also they're at home on a screen for another 4 hours a day. That's kind of crazy. Now, another bit of information I found interesting was 12% of adolescents are at risk for problematic gaming, with boys more likely than girls to show signs of problematic gaming. 16% of boys would show problematic gaming symptoms, whereas 7% of girls would. And that's a pretty big increase in difference too. It also may show a bit more of just like that psychological or physiological difference between male and female, and how that plays a role with screens and what it is that we are thinking psychologically. Now, there's a couple other places that I decided to look around for information too. One of them was the Library of San Diego, so the Public Access Library of San Diego, so pce.sandiego.edu, and this was about digital literacy. Now, one of the reasons that I looked into digital literacy is because as screen time increases and as these issues with psychology increase with screen time, digital literacy is one way of combating some of the issues, and I feel if screen time isn't going to be reduced in average society in our daily use, that perhaps digital literacy may be something that can be of use to our youth as well as ourselves in understanding and combating some of these issues. So what is the use of digital literacy? UNICEF defines digital literacy as the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that allow children to flourish and thrive in an increasingly global digital world, being both safe and empowered in ways that are appropriate to their age in local cultures and contexts. Now that's kind of interesting because what it tries to tell me is that you want to make sure to teach, show, and give the kids attitudes which help them flourish and thrive in an increasingly global digital world, meaning how many screens that we interact with and the technology we interact with, keeping them safe and empowered, meaning that they know their limits as well as understand the limits and can choose to use them in an appropriate manner. And then the other thing is also allowing for that local culture and context to come into play, right? Because there are increased digital areas, whereas rural areas may not have so much access to technology. Now, one thing cool that I looked at was UNICEF reports that 70% of 15 to 24-year-olds are on the internet daily. That's a pretty big percentage of people that are on the internet daily. Now, some of the benefits that they show of digital literacy are: one, they improved writing, reading, listening, and speaking skills. Two, the ability to identify authentic material, which is huge because as AI gets more abundant and robust, and as people continue to use AI, and it will be up to the individual to decipher what it is that is real and what is not. So that is going to be huge. That's like a big commie mind trick that somebody warned me about when I was a kid. It's come true. Not really, but I just want to throw that in there as a ha-ha. I do believe that there's large amounts of people trying to perhaps warp what you are thinking using the internet. So number 3, increased frequency and ability to use digital technology, which is pretty straightforward, right? We are going to continue to use technology, so we want to increase the frequency and ability to use the digital technology. Okay. Now number 4, enhanced ability to collaborate with teachers and peers. So that's another thing that technology does, is if we're at a distance from people that we know, it does allow us to connect and as well as flourish. We are allowed enhanced engagement, meaning that we have new ways to collaborate as well as share information. And 6, improved academic performance. Due to these technologies and advancements in technology, we now have access to things that we never did before, or that would take large amounts of time and energy to get to the information. And now we can just use a simple search bar or AI device and get to that information quickly. So that's huge. So those 6 digital benefits, or benefits of digital literacy, are something that UNICEF and University of San Diego have put out. And there's also tons of other schools. This is one of the places that I look towards what is digital literacy and how can that help with screen time and its correlation to depression in people, as well children nowadays. So a little bit more information just to kind of wrap this up, and I thought this was stuff that would be very interesting and pertaining to how somebody can view digital information and the things that are happening with our screen time and how we are interacting with that screen time, is that 95% of adolescents in the US have at least one mobile device of their own, and 89 own a smartphone. 89% of adolescents own a smartphone. And this was a study done in 2014 by it's published in the National Library of Medicine. There's tons of study. It's study PMC 8221420. So this was done in 2014, and it deals with just US and European mixed markets and how people are interacting with information technology. So what that just said, right, was 95% of adolescents in the US have at least one mobile device of their own and 89 own a smartphone. Now, in Europe in 2014, kids between 9 and 16 owned, or 80% of them owned a smartphone or a tablet. So that's huge. That's showing us that most of the world nowadays is on a phone or technology, and how are we interacting with that? Now, 1/3 of users of the internet are under the age of 18. That's a huge amount of people on the internet that do not actually hold rights to themselves. They are under the care and guardianship of somebody else, and are also allowed to interact with the world and stuff like that, but can also make decisions which can be life-changing because they have access to that information and ability with the internet. So I don't know where that's supposed to go or how to regulate that, but that's another bit of information that I find interesting. And then another thing I found interesting too is the studies have collected data showing 48% of 11-year-olds in the sample group owned cell phones in 2014, and that teens 13 to 18 were spending an average of 6.67 hours per day on a screen, with younger peers 8 to 12 spending 4.6 hours. Now, with some of the information we had earlier where kids are gaming after 2, that's 10 hours plus a day on the screen. And then younger children, that'd be like 8 or 9 hours a day on the screen. That's absolutely wild. That's not even including TV time or how families interact nowadays. So I am just absolutely blown away by that, and I hate those numbers. I'm a very interactive father. I want to be there, be in it, enjoy life, experience it. These screens, they pull everybody away, and it's just this crazy information. So those are just some of the information that I've come about and stuff like that. Now, in a conclusion, what I can say is that by increasing digital literacy, as well as starting to understand more about telepsychology, that is how screens interact with your psychology and how people can manipulate your psychology with these screens, you will have a better understanding of how to combat some of the depressions that you're feeling, or perhaps some of the kids that your kids are feeling. I know that I've kind of gone on for a bit here, and I can continue to go on. As you can see, this is a very passionate sort of subject for me. So I hope I've increased your literacy and understanding about how screen times can affect your psychology, and how perhaps some of the people in your lives' psychology are affected by screens, and perhaps how this is a good way to seek conversation on what we should do as a community and as a society to help combat technology and how it is ever increasing in our lives. Thank you. Have a blessed day.